Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Before we start with our today's analysis, we have an announcement. Byju's IAS is conducting Byju's National Scholarship Test, which is scheduled to be conducted on 3rd of October 2021. How do you register? Follow the link given in the description box, give the necessary information, and you would stand a chance of winning some attractive scholarships. Do note, registrations will close on 2nd of October 2021 at 11 a.m. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says making parties constitutional. This article here is speaking about political parties. What are the purposes of political party? When we speak about political party, there are men, there are people, there are individuals who come together. They form an organized group. This organized group will have a political value. They will have their own ethos and they will also have political ideas as well. So people who have similar wavelength enter into this organizational mode so that they can fight and contest the elections and ultimately form the government. So what is a political party? A political party is an organized group of people who have similar political aims and opinions. They want to influence the public policy. How? By entering and forming a government. What will happen when a political party forms a government? So the political party is acting as a bridge. They would be able to speak to the people, take the viewpoints of the people and bring it in the form of a public policy. In order to ensure that this happens, what we have is a political party. The author here tries to understand this concept of political party by taking comparisons from multiple countries. He takes the example of People's Republic of China. In People's Republic of China, what do we have? Do we have a multi-party democracy? No. What we have is one single political party in the form of Communist Party of China. So what happens in China? There is only one single party, which is the Communist Party of China. It is this party which runs the government. So when it comes to political party, there is just one political party in China. Now let's understand what happens in United States of America. When it comes to United States of America, the American Constitution explicitly does not mention anything about the political parties. So what happens? The Constitution does not mention about political parties. It is silent on the very subject of political parties. However, when we look into the First Amendment speaks about the freedom of association. Making use of this freedom of association, group of people come together and what they form is a political party. Explicitly, it is not mentioned in the Constitution of United States of America, but because the First Amendment makes a mention of the freedom of association, using this political parties are formed. When it comes to the American Constitution, we have two major political parties. One happens to be the Democrats, the other happens to be the Republicans. So what we have is a two-party system. Now let's understand what is happening in United Kingdom. In United Kingdom, what we have is many political parties which also fight the elections as well. They are represented in the House of the Commons and the House of the Lords as well. Let's take the example of Conservative Party, Cooperative Party, Green Party, Labour Party. So what we see is that there are multiple parties as well. But is it mentioned in the Constitution of United Kingdom? No, because United Kingdom Constitution is equivalent to law of the land as well, where there is sovereignty of the Parliament and not the sovereignty of the Constitution. So when we compare United Kingdom with United States of America, United States of America has a constitution, but when it comes to United Kingdom, it is equivalent to a law. So the political party's existence is there, but this is not mentioned explicitly as a constitutional paradigm. So what we have seen in all these countries is that in China, they have just one political party. In American Constitution, there are two major political parties, but that is not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution. But in United Kingdom, since the law of the land is equivalent to that of the Constitution, again there is no mention of political parties in United Kingdom. Now, this is where the author brings into a picture of the model of Germany. What happens in Germany? We have the basic law of Federal Republic of Germany. This explicitly mentions about the attitude, about the ethos, the values, the formation of a political party. In all these systems that we have, there is only one party which is there in China, but in the other two systems, there is no explicit mention of political party in the constitution. But when it comes to Germany, there is an explicit mention of political party, how they have to form, what are the guidelines that they have to follow. This is clearly prescribed in the Germany constitution. Article 21 of the basic law deals with the status, rights, duties and functions of the political party. What does it say? One of the important principles under this particular basic law of Germany clearly goes on to point out that as we have democracy where we elect one of the candidates from a constituency to the parliament or the state legislature in India, similarly in Germany what they also have is a process where there is external democracy. As much as there is external democracy, it should also give importance to the inner party democracy or the internal organization. So what is happening here? It is not only the external democracy where people vote for a political candidate, but within an organization, within a political party, it also supports inner party democracy where there is also elections within a political party. If they want to select a person who is heading that political party, that person will also have to be elected within that party. That's one of the very important paradigm under the Germany constitution. Added to this, whenever we have a political party, what it requires is funding. Why is this funding required? Because they require a manifesto. They have to ensure that these objectives in the manifesto ultimately reach the people. They have to convey their objectives to the people. They have to go for canvassing as well. They have to reach out to the people as well. So what this requires is large amount of money. So what it requires is funding. But how is this funding coming from? Where is this funding coming from? Who are contributing to that political party? How much money are they receiving? Which organization is contributing? All of it is required when it comes to the political funding. So when it comes to Germany constitution, it clearly identifies that sources and use of these funds will also have to be provided by that political party. Added to this, there is a democratic basic order that has to be established where it should not undermine some of the basic principles of the constitution. If we consider the basic principles in the Indian constitution, we have democracy, we also have secular principles. These are some of the basic aspects. Similarly, in Germany, there are some basic value system. So a political party should not undermine those basic principles. Added to this, in case they are violating these principles, not respecting the basic values in Germany constitution, there would be a federal constitutional court which would also say that that political party is not mandating listening to the basic values of the constitution, and ultimately it can also declare it as unconstitutional as well. So what do we have? We have a political party system. This political party system is recognized explicitly in the constitution, but in the other country's constitution, in the other country's law, it is not explicitly mentioned, but in the constitution of Germany, it is clearly specified what should be the activities of political parties. Now let's bring it to India. We have discussed about all these countries, multiple examples. If we have to consider India, does India mention about the political party? That is, the constitution, does it mention about the political parties? No. The constitution of India, yes, it does speak about the cooperative society. The constitution of India also says that cooperative societies elections, the mandate, everything is mentioned. While we speak about cooperative societies in the constitution, it does not mention anything about the political parties, its functions, its values, and its conduct principles as well. In fact, if we have to consider what is happening in India, there is only one section in the Representation of the People's Act of 1951, which is about section 29A. What is the section 29A? It speaks about registration of a political party. If a party has to fight elections, run in the democracy to form a government, what should they do? They have to register. So the Election Commission of India will give some guidelines as well. So it is only this law under this section which speaks about the political parties. The constitution does not speak about it. It does not give any guidelines whatsoever. It does not prescribe a standard. And at the same time, when you consider Germany and India, there are a lot of value system that is already given in the constitution that is not the same when it comes to Germany. What does the author say? The author in this particular case tries to understand how does internal democracy work in a developed country, and is it the same in India. When it comes to the internal democracy, as we have discussed, it means there has to be internal understanding within the political party. Who will be the leader? There has to be elections within a political party. Who will be the secretary? Who will be the president? Who will be the vice president? Who will take care of the party whip? All of which has to be on a basis of election within a political party. But when you consider the developed countries, they also have the internal democracy, inner party democracy that is not existing in India, says the author. If you have to speak about the internal democracy, let's take the example of United Kingdom. The Conservative Party has the National Conservative Convention where leaders are elected, leaders are selected. You would have the chairman and the vice chairman who are elected on its annual meeting. And when we consider the United States of America, we also have the Democratic and the Republic Party have the National Committee as well. This particular committee is one of the important decision making committee which will decide about the role of the presidential election and the agenda setting. While all of this is present in the developed countries, in India, which is the longest constitution, does not mention anything about the inner party democracy. It does not speak about the standards prescribed for these political parties. This is where there is a major problem, says the author. In fact, if you consider the Election Commission of India, there was a case filed in the Supreme Court of India. Can Election Commission of India regulate the inner party democracy? This was a question asked in the Supreme Court of India in one of the landmark judgments of Indian National Congress versus Institute of Social Welfare and others of 2002. According to this judgment given by the Supreme Court of India, it said that Election Commission of India cannot take any punitive action whatsoever against registered political parties for violating the principles of inner party democracy. So what do we understand? That Election Commission of India can nowhere interfere with any of the political parties in India when it comes to the internal democracy or the inner party democracy. Added to this, when it comes to India, there are a lot many other challenges as well. One of the challenges that we discussed is about inner party democracy. Added to this, political parties in India are not based on policy. It is not based on bringing about change and reforms, but there are few political parties which are caste based. There are few political parties which are religion based. Then there are political parties which are family based as well. So these people are not seeking the opinion of the people, seeking the vote of the people on the basis of merit, on the basis of policy, on the basis of law and order issue, but instead, just because they happen to belong to a particular caste, they want to garner the votes of that caste, they want to garner the votes of that religion. In fact, it has also become a family fiefdom as well, where it is one single family which has complete control over that party, and there are no chief ministers or other important ministries are not given to any other person apart from that family who is the member of that political party. So what is the author saying? The author in this particular backdrop says that in the past we've had the Dinesh Goswami committee, the Tarkunde committee and the Indrajit Gupta committee, which wanted large scale reforms to be introduced at the political level for the political parties. In fact, the 1999 Law Commission report strongly recommended the introduction of a framework for governing the internal structure and coming up with inner party democracy for political parties as well. So the 1999 Law Commission clearly wanted and supported the very cause of inner party democracy as well. These are some of the recommendations from the past. So the author in this particular case goes on to say that we have to constitutionalize the political parties so that there is inner party democracy. As of now, there is mention only in a statutory provision. It is not mentioned in the constitution. Framework guidelines and standards are not prescribed. So if we can constitutionalize the role of the political parties as given in the Germany constitution, we would be able to bring large scale changes. We would be able to ensure free and fair internal elections, question the procedure of distributing party tickets, and ultimately candidate who deserve it, candidate who actually are worth it, will be given ticket within that political party. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says a state, a clean sweep, and the art of sanitation. The article here is speaking about the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan with special emphasis to what is happening in Madhya Pradesh. Back in the year 2014, on October 2nd, Prime Minister of India introduced the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, which is also called as the Clean India Mission. What is it? There are multiple sanitation issues in India. Identifying it, coming up with reformative measures, and ensuring that India becomes open defecation free is the objective of this particular program. In this particular article, the author, who happens to be the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, which is Shivraj Singh Chauhan ji, comes up and speaks about how the state of Madhya Pradesh was able to evolve multiple strategies to become open defecation free, and in order to make sure, it has also taken multiple steps during this particular process. Let's understand what is this Madhya Pradesh model all about. When we speak about sanitation, the first thing that we have to understand is to get the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? It is the people, it is the institutions, and what we require is the problems faced by the people. So first thing that the Madhya Pradesh model did was to understand what are the sanitation issues. Are they getting water? Is it the construction of the toilets? What is the major problem? So all the stakeholders were brought on a common platform, questions were asked, answers were taken, and ultimately these problems were taken seriously by the Madhya Pradesh government and solutions were provided to it. The Madhya Pradesh model speaks about two issues. One, it speaks about how individuals want to keep up their surroundings clean, they want to keep up their homes clean, they want to keep up their atmospheres and the environments in and around them clean. However, when it comes to the larger picture of the society, it puts the entire onus on the government. So what is the Madhya Pradesh model speaking about? It says that ideally it is the individuals who also make up the society. If we are speaking about keeping our houses clean, keeping about immediate neighborhood clean, it also means the individuals will also contribute. Individuals will also have to contribute to keep the society at large in a clean and an hygienic manner. However, the individuals here did not contribute at the societal level, but instead all the blame was put on the government. So what we required is change in the thought process. Why change in the thought process? Because individually they were able to keep up their homes clean, their immediate neighborhood clean, but when it comes to the society, they thought that it is only the government which has to bring the change. They have no role whatsoever. So instead, the government wanted to bring a change, thereby bring a change in the thought process. So what did the government do? The government introduced what is called as Jan Bhagidari. What is this Jan Bhagidari? Jan here stands for people and Bhagidari here stands for participation. So make sure that people are participating in this process. The author also takes into picture two important viewpoints. One is the short-term solutions. The other is the multi-pronged solutions. What are these short-term solutions? Let's say, for example, the government has already constructed the toilets. It has also made sure that water supply is provided to these toilets as well. But in spite of this, the people are not using the toilets. They are openly defecating as well. In such a case, what can the government do? The government can enforce fine on such people. However, the government did not use this compulsive formula, but instead went by a multi-pronged strategy. What is this multi-pronged strategy? This can be divided into two parts. One is the communication based, the other is the engineering solution. First, it tried to identify what was the major problem in spite of the toilets, in spite of the water, in spite of the basic amenities provided by the government. Why is that the people not using it? So there was an awareness problem to the people. They also had an apprehension that if they start using the toilets, this can also impact their health as well. And added to this, who will remove the night soil is one of the questions asked by the people. In order to overcome all these queries, questions, what did the government do? The government started interacting with them. Interacting how? From the collector level to a local level leader to a Gram Panchayat level leaders, all of them were informed about this process. They were asked to communicate to the people in that particular region, bringing an awareness about the sanitation program, bringing an awareness about the hygiene as well, and how if there is open defecation, how it may also impact them as well as the children, about the safety of the women as well. So all of this was taken into picture, an awareness program was created, and ultimately people became aware as to why they should be using the toilets. This is first part, which is about awareness and communication. The second part is about the engineering solutions. What is it about engineering solutions? This is where the author brings into picture the innovation evolved in multiple districts in Madhya Pradesh. One of the unique initiatives happened to be the Tippy Tap. What is this Tippy Tap? This is an easy way where a person would be able to wash his hands by making use of simple protocols. What are these simple protocols? One, what we require is a wood, what we require is a can, what we require is the foot lever, and this person would be able to press it. There will be all soap and the hand sanitizer as well, and ultimately they would be able to wash their hands without even touching the hands as well. So what this does is, it is an innovative program which was undertaken in one of the districts in Madhya Pradesh called as Tippy Tap. All that we require is some basic things so that one would be able to keep themselves hygienic by using some of the simple principles. Added to this, there was also another simple solution which was in hand, that was installation of a small hook in the toilet so that the senior citizens and those suffering from the disabilities could rise with ease from a squatting position. These are some of the innovative measures taken by the government of Madhya Pradesh. Added to this, if we have to speak about one of the cities, the author brings into picture the city of Indore as well. What was happening? There was lot of wastewater that was being generated. This was being processed. This was also cleaned. The wastewater was treated to a satisfactory level before releasing into the rivers, thus maintaining the cleanliness in the rivers. Since they were able to take up all of these measures, what the author intends is, what we require is more Jan Bakidari, where people will have to participate, the state will have to come together, awareness will have to be created, and more innovative measures will have to be taken. If all of this comes and falls into picture, what we will have is a successful implementation of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, says the author. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says hidden debt raising for partners of China's BRI plan. The article here is speaking about debt trap diplomacy. What is this debt trap diplomacy? As the very name denotes, there is debt, that is money is given to countries. Why? So that they could develop the infrastructure. They have taken money from China, but they have to pay back them as well. Since they are not able to pay back, that is where they fall in the debt trap, which is called as the debt trap diplomacy, which is undertaken by China. So what happens in the debt trap diplomacy? Concessional loans are given to the developing countries. Why are these given? So that these countries who are taking the loans from China would be able to develop the infrastructure in their country. They would be expecting returns from this infrastructure, but because they are not able to get the required amount of profits from the developed infrastructure, they would not be able to pay back the loans on time. As a result, what would happen? They would fall in a debt trap of China. Why is China engaging in such an activity? That is because one, it wants to ensure that there is economic superiority in comparison to other countries. Two, it is providing cheap loans to multiple low and middle income countries so that they are enticed towards it. And ultimately, what we will have is these loans given by China will be comparatively cheaper in comparison to market rates, and there will also be leniency in the grace period as well. What do we mean by it? Let's suppose there is a country which is taking loan from World Bank. Hypothetical example, if it is being charged at about 2%, let's assume so, or it is taking from United States of America. Let's assume hypothetically the interest that it is charging is about 1.5%. So the World Bank is giving at 2%, United States of America is giving at 1.5%, but China may give it at 1%. So whom will you buy the loans from? It is obviously China. So the market rate might be comparatively higher, but when it comes to China, it is providing cheap loans to these countries. Added to this, there is leniency in the grace period as well. What do we mean by it? Let's take for example, there is a country which has taken money from China. Ideally, the repayment amount should have been paid in about 10 years. But what does China do? It also gives them a grace period of plus 2 years. Since China has all these provisions, but these countries are not able to extract the profits from the infrastructural projects. Ultimately, they fall in the debt trap of China. Let's take some of the examples. If we take the example of Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka, for instance, had taken money from China for constructing the Hambantota port. They were not able to generate profits, so what has it done? It has given up this Hambantota port for 99 years of lease to China. So what is China doing? China is utilizing this Hambantota port for its own strategic advantage. China had also given loans to Djibouti as well. Djibouti was not able to pay back the loan on time, which is why China was able to construct the first military base in Djibouti. In fact, United States of America was not happy about this military base in Djibouti. Let's take another example. We have Angola. Angola was not able to pay back money to China. So what is Angola doing? It is paying back China in the form of crude oil. In fact, Angola has one of the economies which is mostly based off crude oil, but because they are not able to repay back the money, they have to pay back in terms of sending the crude oil. So their economy is also under problem. Our immediate neighbor Pakistan is also under serious problem. That is because they have taken a lot of money in the form of CPEC, infrastructural development. They may not be able to pay back the money, and in the near future they may also become the colony of China as well. All this means that these countries are falling into the debt trap diplomacy. So this article currently goes on to say that as per a new study, there has been an underreportment of these debts. Currently it is to the tune of 385 billion in all those projects invested by China. If we have to look into the statistics from 2000 to 2017, Iraq got about 8.5 billion dollars, North Korea 7.17 billion dollars, Ethiopia 6.57 dollars were the biggest recipients of official development assistance, while Russia has got about 151.8 billion dollars, Venezuela 81.96 billion dollars, Angola 50.47 billion dollars were the biggest recipients of the Chinese loans. So now what is that we have to understand? Why does these countries go for loans from China? That is because, as we have discussed, one, it might be low. These countries, when they ask other countries, the other countries may not give them. The World Bank may not support them because they're not ready to get the reforms that is important from the structural viewpoint. And at the same time, there might also be other issues as well, like for example North Korea, where it does not have good relationship with any of the countries. United States of America wants to impose sanctions on North Korea, but these countries get funding from China because China has good understanding with such countries. On one side, it provides cheap loans. There is no other country which provides such loans to these countries, which is why China is able to give loans to these countries, and that is why it is flourishing in the form of debt trap diplomacy. So the article here goes on to say that more countries will have to give loans if we have to cut the dominance and hegemony of China. The World Bank and other banks world over will have to take up the responsibility so that they could provide these infrastructural loans at a very low interest so that countries do not fall in the debt trap diplomacy. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, should universities avoid teaching controversial texts? Before we understand what this article is all about, let's have a brief idea about an ideology. What is an ideology? We speak about different terms. We speak about equality. We speak about rights of the people. We speak about freedom, fairness, justice, right, so on and so forth. Similarly, we also speak about conservative viewpoint, liberal viewpoint, socialist viewpoint, communist viewpoint, and fascist viewpoint. What are these terms? If we are speaking about fascism, if we are speaking about what is this fascism, what do the value system in fascism have it, what are the viewpoints of the fascists, what does it help in, what is the detrimental issues. This is one point of view. If we are accusing someone to be a communist, who is a communist, what are the values that particular communist holds on to? Is he always reactionary? Does he always believe in revolution? So what is this principle of ideology? Let's take another viewpoint. We say that there is different ideologies like the right wing ideology, like the left wing ideology, and the centric ideology. It is generally said when it comes to the right wing ideology in the economic form, they support the capitalistic principle. If we speak about the left wing ideology, they support a welfare state where it is state led. If we speak about centric approach, they have a balancing viewpoint of both the left as well as the right. So if we speak about ideologies, there are political thinkers who support these ideologies as well. Let's say for example, if we speak about left-wing ideology, we can say communism is one of the ideology where Marx has given number of articles about the left-wing ideology. If we speak about the right-wing ideology, we might also take into picture the fascism. We can also take into picture the Nazism as well. We might also have the extreme radical viewpoints espoused by the reactionary forces as well. Similarly, we would also have political thinkers. So this article currently goes on to say that there are different political thinkers. They also have different viewpoints. One might be neutral in picture, one might be concentrating on the left front, one might be focusing on the reactionary forces, which is fundamental in nature, reactionary in nature, conservative in nature. So if there are these texts, if there are these articles, should it be allowed in colleges? Should students read about such texts? Should they know about the ideology? Should they read more about this radical viewpoint? Is this article all about? So basically, this is the question that is being discussed, that there might be few radical texts given by the political thinkers of a particular ideology. Should college students read them or not? So the author in this particular case, having looked into the discussion, goes on to say that when it comes to the post graduation students, they should be open to all types of ideologies. If we speak about the right wing ideology, there might be political thinkers of the right wing ideology. There might be supporting a particular principle, a value system, a political idea of nurturing that particular country, how power capture can happen, what cultural influence they can have in that particular territory. All of it might be fundamentalist, all of it might be radical in force. But when it comes to the education in India, the post graduation students should read all types of documents, should read all types of ideology, and ultimately they should be in a position to critically examine such examples and ultimately come to a conclusion. So should there be bar on such wordings? Should there be bar on such ideology work? No, because the post graduation work has a maturity to understand these ideas, critically examine, they should be allowed to read such text, such words, such political thinkers viewpoints, says the author. Added to this, when we speak about these types of ideology and their work, there is something called as the freedom of expression. It might be radical as well. it can also have disturbing consequences to the society as well, leading to a law and order problem. In all these cases, the text will have to be read, critically evaluated, examined, and these postgraduate students should be in a position to understand and finally come to a conclusion. So such text, such ideological text, such radical text, such fundamentalist text, irrespective of what it is espousing, a postgraduate student should have an hands on it and he should be able to critically examine it, says this article. In support of these arguments, an expression given by John Stuart Mill on liberty becomes very important. What has John Stuart Mill spoken about liberty? He goes on to say that bad arguments should be allowed to flourish. Why? That is because false things should be allowed to be said. Only when there are false things in picture, we would be able to take it on, we would be able to deliberate, we would be able to give counter arguments. It is when the false propaganda put out by a particular person can be completely countered so that we can establish the truth. So what we require is more of these words to come in the public forum so that the falsehood can be completely eliminated, says this article. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Making political parties constitutional will ensure in party democracy by bringing transparency in its functioning. Substantiate. Sanitation is not just about building toilets, it is much more. Discuss. So please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review. Do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.